We are sitting here on Election Eve and happy to welcome on and spend a few minutes with the new afternoon host on KCMO 95.7 FM. He is Guy Benson. You can stream us this morning all morning long on the iHeart TuneIn or KCMO Talk Radio app. Guy, I said this morning that if I was the Trump campaign, I would have felt better 8 days ago than I do today, but it doesn't mean they still can't be confident. Where do you think they're at right now?
You know, it's tough to tell how much of the confidence is real versus just what campaigns do, right? I mean, the campaign's like, yeah, we think we're feeling really, really good. And then the Harris campaign is saying, yeah, we're optimistic that the momentum's with us. And it's sort of a choose your own adventure when it comes to the spin. I mean, you can absolutely offer a totally plausible path for Donald Trump to win this election tomorrow, or for Kamala Harris to win tomorrow. And, you know, I sort of keep going back and forth in my own head and then my gut. And it's okay, what are those things telling me? And then I might even have a tentative conclusion. And then I'm like, yeah, but I don't really trust it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they can even have, this is the thing about campaigns, they can even have internal numbers that they feel pretty confident about. And the internal numbers might be right, they might be wrong. I mean, you know, the Hillary campaign, they had their internal numbers, and they were literally drinking champagne on election morning because they were so confident they were going to win based on their data. And you know, Mitt Romney's team in 2012, they also really felt that the public polling was mostly off and that they had this thing, and then they didn't. So, you know, that's not terribly helpful to your audience, but, you know, both campaigns are making optimistic sounds. But I don't know what else you would expect from them a day out when they're trying to get as many of their folks who haven't voted yet to show up tomorrow.
Yeah, and the big unknown to me on the Trump side, at least in part, is the young male voter that they've targeted that is a low propensity voter. If they don't show up, then it probably doesn't go their way tomorrow. Is that fair, or is that oversimplifying it?
Well, I think what they need is overwhelmingly strong Republican high propensity voters to vote tomorrow. I think, and of course, I mean, if they can get as many low propensity people as possible, great. I think they've been trying to do that in the early vote and have had some success a number of places. They need to win election day pretty handily, which is not, you know, some unbelievable or impossible task. This is how the dynamic goes. You know, it's how Trump, you know, won, for example, in 2016, and it wasn't enough for him to win in 2020. They need enough of their supporters to come out and support them tomorrow to make up the gaps that the Democrats have built for themselves with early voting, which many places are smaller gaps than they were 4 years ago. But the question is, have those gaps been closed by people who just shifted their vote from what would be election day to early, and now there's fewer of them left to vote tomorrow? Or did they really turn out a lot of these new voters? I know that one of the Republican advantages in the last year or so is registrations. They've done a very good job registering new Republican voters. You know, has that work paid off? The other thing that people aren't talking as much about, but I think should be, you know, a lot of people are doing kind of this counting about Republican turnout versus Democratic turnout. It's like, okay, does Democratic turnout look a little bit soft? Whereas Republican turnout, especially in rural areas, looks really, really strong. That's all true. But you also have a ton of independent voters who are participating, and the way that they break could very well be the entire ballgame. Like, you'll have some national polls that have Trump winning independents, and you've got other polls that have Harris winning independents. Like, well, okay, I mean, that's a really important thing to eventually see. And if that were knowable, I think that would give us a real insight into how this thing's going to go.
Guy Benson is here on KCMO at a month into having him on 95.7 FM every afternoon from 3 to 5 after Ben Shapiro and before Mark Levin. So the women-men breakdown in not just the election in general, Guy, but especially in the early voting, women are about 54 to 46 over men. The assumption is that that's very good for Democrats, and that's a fair assumption to make, but we really don't know who those women are. Are they married women who might trend a little more Republican than young single women? How much do you read into that male-female breakdown in the early voting?
Well, I mean, married women vote much, much more Republican than unmarried single women. Like, the married women are a much more Republican demographic, whereas the number one demographic for Dems are single women who are not married. So, which I guess is definitionally single. In any case, look, I was looking at some of those numbers, and it was like, okay, women are voting in significantly greater numbers early than men, which is true. But if you go back to 4 years ago, that was also the case. The early vote skewed significantly female, and then men were much more likely to show up on Election Day itself. So if that's a dynamic that continues to be the case, then Trump is very much in the ballgame. If men don't show up in force tomorrow, if they've put it off, if they kind of would like him to win but haven't thought too much about it, don't really have a plan to vote, and it ends up being a very heavily female final electorate, not just early, but when all the votes are counted, if it is skewed disproportionately female, because usually more women vote than men, that's typical, but significantly more women voting than men, then I think it's going to be really hard for Trump to win, because that gender gap exists. In some cases, he is doing better among men than she is doing among women. But in order for that to be beneficial to him, you need a critical mass of men to vote. So I think I saw it was Karl Rove saying something along the lines of, if the electorate is 51, 52% female overall, Trump has a good shot. If it's 53, 54% female, then it's going to be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So the dudes need to show up tomorrow for Trump, and the Republicans need to hit their marks with a solid Election Day win. And then you mix those with the votes that are already banked and see where that leaves us.
Guy Benson on KCMO. What did you make? I'm pretty sure I heard you talking about it at some point last week. The Democratic PAC ad that was put out with the husband and wife going to the polls, and the husband kind of saying to his wife, oh, you know what to do. And then she goes out there and she ends up voting for Kamala Harris while tricking her husband into thinking she voted for Donald Trump. It was like, I don't know, right out of 1954 instead of 2024. What are we to make from ads like that Democratic PAC groups are running heavy on?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like that was weird. I think that one, if I'm not mistaken, was voiced by Julia Roberts.
Yes.
So we've got the Hollywood celebrities coming in for the Democrats and urging women to lie to their husbands. That's a weird look to me. Maybe there are some women, right, who are from conservative families or whatever, and they don't really want to vote for Trump, but they want to tell people that they are, and then they'll secretly go vote for Harris. I think that is true maybe of some people, but I also think Mary Catherine Ham is one of my good friends. She's on the show a lot, and she wonders, based on her experience with her friends and folks that she knows, is there a very similar effect of, let's say, some suburban women telling all their gal pals, their left-leaning, aggressive, fanatically political gal pals, like, oh, yes, of course, Trump's horrifying, and, women's rights and all of that. But deep down, they're worried about inflation. They're worried about crime. They feel like things are going in the wrong direction. The headlines out of the border are disgusting to them, and they're going to lie to some people about how they're voting, but it's not their husbands. It's their girlfriends. The shy Trump voter in a different context. So, look, it's guesswork at this point. The experts, I try to read what a lot of people have to say, including very smart people, and someone's going to be right, someone's going to be wrong. But I think the idea that anyone ought to be supremely confident about anything is a little silly.
Yeah,
it's murky. It's very murky out there, and we don't know what the electorate's going to look like, and we don't know how independents are going to break. So. Those are the big mysteries.
So true. Guy Benson, 3 to 5. Listen to him right here on 95.7 FM, KCMO, every weekday. Guy, we'll be tuned in this afternoon. Thanks for all the great work. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, sir.
All right, there you go. Guy Benson on KCMO.